Welcome back. I'm now joined by Paul Puopolo, founder of an Ontario-based land development firm, Polo Corp Inc. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to delve into more of the mechanics, if you will, of development and why perhaps some of the zoning regulations are causing or exacerbating the housing crisis we have. So how does the housing development process or even the state of housing differ from, say, 40 years ago in your experience?
Well, I think there's two probably major factors. One is the timing to get approval. And it's taken in the 70s and 80s, I recall it would take you anywhere from about a year and a half on average to get any approvals for a residential land development. Nowadays, in the 2022 move forward, it takes you anywhere to 3 to 5 years plus to get any approvals for residential land development in Ontario.
Wow. So that's a lot of carrying cost. And really, I can only imagine
Yes.
a very large developer could carry such costs. Those who are starting to do infill development with a few units here and there, that would be out of reach for them.
Well, I think, in the 70s, I recall in my days of practice, we had a lot of small builders, small little independent builders that would be able to handle this. And nowadays, because the costs, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars for a lot of these municipal studies that are required, whether it be a tree management plan, a stormwater management plan, a subdivision plan, all of those various studies require time and effort. And now it takes literally millions. So the major corporations are the only ones that can afford to get involved in the land development business in the 2022.
Now, you mentioned a plethora of plans and I guess sign-offs you require to get a shovel into the ground before you build, and you said this takes perhaps anywhere between 3 and 5 years. Let's talk about some of those things. You mentioned, a tree. Maybe you need an urban study, probably traffic as well. And what does that mean?
Studies. Well, it just means time. I think one of the major arguments that I've been hearing is that local standards are a barrier, such as heritage designation, buffer zone, tree management plan, engineering, traffic studies, noise studies, stormwater management. But those are all good urban design regulation to balance both the public and the private. That for the but what has happened in the process is the timing for obtaining approvals and the scoping of the studies needs to be really revisited in the planning profession. Because number one, it's taking too long for the approvals. And number two, the scopes of studies are really getting out of hand and they should really be focused on those. So I don't think anybody's arguing that, the barriers like the urban standard should be removed. I'm not an advocate of that. However, they need to be balanced both from a timing and the scoping of the work.
So why if these studies sort of always existed, why has the process become so protracted now? Is it just increased bureaucracy? Is there more civilian interest and perhaps engagement with these developments?
I think it's twofold. Number one is I think we need to streamline the planning, the public input into the process. I recall in the 70s and 80s, you'd have maybe one meeting with the residents, 2 meetings. Now it's not uncommon to have 10, 15 meetings. And that's where a lot of the developers and builders get frustrated and then refer it to the LPAT tribunal to have an independent hearing just because of the timing required to get all these things. So that's number one. And number two, I think the scope of this study, the process really needs to be streamlined. There should be more effective studies, and the timeline, like I said, for approvals need to be reviewed and somewhat truncated to make it more manageable for approvals.
So if you're, say, not a large developer and you're just a homeowner and you have a single detached home and you say, you know what, I don't need all this house. Why don't I redevelop this property and put two semis on it and make 2 units? I can rent out one and live in the other half. Would a resident face this kind of 3 to 5 year delay potentially?
Under the current rules, they probably would.
Wow.
But if the inclusionary zoning was to be implemented today, which would include all single-family housing units. So behind me, I just wanted to show you an example. If the rules were changed to allow semis, singles, townhouses, and stacked houses that are behind me, this is the form of housing that would go into the single-family zoning categories throughout the municipalities, and also provide more housing form in a more timely manner.
Okay, I'm
So
going to
this is
pause you
what I'm
there. We
advocating.
have to cut to commercial, but we'll be right back.